Son, come on up here. Let the camera see you. Your name?
Preston.
Preston. Here's what I want you to do. After the show, you go home today, after school. I want you to tell your mom, your dad, this. Ma, I want you to know, I've decided I'm going to listen to you. I've decided that about 90% of the time I agree with your rules. The 10% that I don't agree, I'm going to decide if I want to obey. Now, Mom, you starting to hurt already there, Preston?
Yeah, a little bit.
Now, wait a minute. Now, here's your big thing. You're going to tell them, you should feel grateful to me because 90% of the time I agree with you. Now, you understand the 10% that I don't, I have the authority to decide not to obey. But 90%, that's more than most teenagers. Now, you tell your parents that, what do you think would happen?
That wouldn't go over too well, honestly.
Why, your parents unreasonable? What? Why wouldn't that work?
Well, they expect me to listen 100% of the time.
But 90% is really good. I mean, who listens 90% of the time? And the only reason you won't listen is because you decide what you're going to go with.
But the other 90% of the time, too, I decide whether or not I listen.
Oh, so in other words, if there's any of that 90% you don't agree with, you cannot listen and not obey.
No. All the time, I get to decide whether or not I listen.
Oh, man, that's pretty good. And you don't think they'd like that?
Probably not.
They wouldn't consider you an obedient teenage son?
No, sir.
All right, you made my point. Thanks, Preston.
Of course.
Is there any parent in here who would look at a child who would say that and say, that's an obedient child? 90%? Why not? Because as Preston said, he decides. The authority is in his hands. It just so happens that he agrees, but if he didn't agree, curfew. I don't agree on the curfew, okay? So I'm coming in at 2. You say 12, I say 2. That's something I don't agree with. But hey, most of the time, I don't steal, I'm not on drugs, I get good grades, I don't hang around with problem kids. You should be happy. Here's the question for the adults in here then. How many of us look at the church and say, you know, I'm a pretty good Catholic. I'm a 90% agreeer. Now, there's some things I don't agree with the church, but it's only 10%. You know, but I decide whether I'm going to agree or whether I don't. So you'd be just like Preston there. You would be a rebellious teenager. And we do that to the church. I figure myself pretty obedient, you know, because me and the church, we're of one mind 90% of the time. But on that 10% that I don't agree, well, hey, it's my authority. I decide whether I'm going to go. And that makes me just like Preston here, a rebellious adolescent.